So we're going to talk about the first of our tools tonight a little bit to help you understand a little bit of how we're going to use some of these tools when we start to write. Because we've started to do all this sort of content gathering, and even to Audrey's story a little bit about like gathering all this stuff, you can start to get a little bit overwhelmed. If you have an interview with someone, and let's just say that you sit down with them, and let's just say it's a really in-depth interview and you talk to them for an hour. Well, if you go out and transcribe that hour-long interview on Otter, you may not be surprised that it's 20,000 words. Right? And 20,000 words of content can be overwhelming, plus all the background research. You can sort of get yourselves buried and think about what to do. So we're going to talk a little bit about one of the big insights I saw about how to start to go from interesting content, from interviews, from your research, into something you can write into a story, and we'll do an example of this one tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do sort of story inventories, but we're going to start by talking a little bit more about what is a story. Now, it seems obvious when you think about what a story is, we've talked about it a few times, that this idea of sort of stories are the way that kind of our conversations move. So we talked before, and I'll sort of ask again, what are some of the core things, core traits that make for a story versus narrative? You guys remember in the core traits? Time/date. Location, second one, and dialogue. Those are the three things. So these are the three things that we're going to sort of remember are really, really key whenever you have a story. And so the core reason why we want to start to write in stories and sort of scenes, not rather than term papers, sort of is that it's just the way that people want to read your book. We've talked about this a few times, that the power of writing a book, particularly a nonfiction book, is it's driven by stories. People in their head imagine what a book looks like, and they think, okay, I've got to have all this knowledge and these facts and things like that. But if you flip through any nonfiction book, it's not really how they're structured. About 80% of a traditional, well-done nonfiction book is driven by stories rather than sort of data and facts and information. We call that sort of that 80% the stories, and we call that 20% the contribution. Now your contribution is sort of that content, those lessons, those teachings, those facts, but the stories are really what drive it. Now people are going to want to have the lessons, they're going to want to have those things, but they're not going to be willing to move or act based on those. More importantly, they'll see those as ways that help them understand. They make decisions based on that, but they make action based on the emotional part in the story. And that's why we want to make sure we write it. Not only is it exciting to read stories, but it's, if I'm going to have to read like a 200-page book that you've written, I don't want to read like a term paper that's 200 pages either. So that's the other part of it, is like you just want to think about your reader in that way, and I think that's why people have this one.